Hi, welcome to A Gray Barn Rising. I'm here with Bootsy, and I'm reading the poems this evening of the Chinese Tang Dynasty poet Han Shan, also known as Cold Mountain. Han Shan's exact years of living are not available, but we do know that he lived during the Tang Dynasty. And he was a wilderness poet. He lived as a recluse in the mountains and spent a great deal of time meditating at a place called Cold Mountain. And he became one with Cold Mountain so deeply that he took on that name, and that people came to refer to him also as Cold Mountain. And it's just such a beautiful story. I've always been moved by that, the ability to become so deeply entwined with a place that you become that place and that you take on that name. I came to Cold Mountain, Han Shan's poems, many years ago. I would say probably the late 70s or certainly the early 80s, through Gary Snyder's translations in this book. I'm not going to be reading from this book this evening, but I wanted to honor Gary Snyder because he turned me on to a poet who has become so entwined with my own consciousness and my own psyche and my own poetics. There are several translations, very good translations. The J.P. Seton translations of Han Shan or Cold Mountain, and also Burton Watson, a well-known translator of Asian texts, and the Robert Hendricks massive book on Han Shan's poems. Han Shan, what we do know is he has about 300 poems, a few more than 300 that are available. And I'm going to be reading from one of my favorite translations, which are the translations of Red Pine. And Red Pine has translated Han Shan a couple of times, this earlier volume, and then he has gone on to revise that volume. And I want to read from this revision, the revised and new edited version by Red Pine. So I'm going to basically read from a few poems that I have in mind, and then if a poem strikes me as my eye goes across the page, I'm just going to read it. So that there might be a few poems that I just interlace in here spontaneously. They're numbered. I'll give you the numbers and go from there. One of the things that I think is really important about Han Shan is that he really intermingles both Taoism and Buddhism in his vision of the universe. And as Gary Snyder points out, Han Shan, when he refers to himself as Cold Mountain in his poems, he's often talking about himself, the individual, and at the same time talking about the place, Cold Mountain, and thirdly, at the same time, talking about the state of consciousness of Cold Mountain, of achieving that transparency between self and other. Number 2. All you who read my poems, guard your purity of heart. Let your greed be modesty, your flattery be honesty. Put an end to evil karma. Trust your own true nature. Find your Buddha body today. Do it as fast as an order. Three. The Cold Mountain road is strange. No tracks of cart or horse. Hard to recall which merging stream or tell which piled up ridge. A myriad plants weep with dew. The pines all sigh the same. Here where the trail disappears, form asks shadow, where to? Poem 70. A hermit's heart is heavy. He mourns the passing years. He looks for roots and mushrooms, but seeks eternal life in vain. His yard is clear, the clouds are gone. The woods are bright, the moon is full. Why doesn't he go home? The cinnamon trees detain him. The Chinese hermit tradition is deeply profound, and many ancient poets and many seekers after the Tao and the Buddha mind would seek refuge in the mountains to be away from the bustle of humanity and to try to become one with nature and to purify their consciousness as deeply as they can. So there's this long, rich tradition in ancient China of the recluse. Poem 72. Pigs devour dead human flesh. Humans savor dead pig guts. Pigs don't mind human stink. Humans say pork smells fine. Throw dead pigs in the river. Bury human bodies deep. If they ever stop eating each other, lotuses will bloom in boiling soup. 73. Chaos was happy. It neither ate nor peed. Whose drill did it meet that gave it these 9 holes? Day in, working for food and clothes. Year out, worrying about rent and taxes. Thousands fight for a coin. The crowd yells, run for your life. Here's one I hadn't planned on, but I want to read it as my eye falls across it. 150. Sitting alone, I keep slipping away, far off with the cares of my heart. Clouds wander by the mountainside. Wind rushes out the valley. Gibbons swing from the trees. Birds call through the forest. Time slips past my temples. Year end finds me old with regrets. 155. For the 100 years of human life, the Buddha preached a 12-fold canon. But compassion is like a wild deer, and anger is like the family dog. You can't drive the dog away. The deer, meanwhile, prefers to run. To tame your monkey mind, listen to the lion's roar. That line about the monkey mind, that comes in both Buddhist and Hindu yogic texts, that the yogis and the Buddhist meditators say that the mind wants to move around from branch to branch, tree to tree, always jittery. They call it the monkey mind. And what one tries to do in meditation is calm the monkey mind. So he says, to tame your monkey mind, listen to the lion's roar. People can't, 223, people can't explain the reason they're so crazy. The 2 evil birds on top of their heads, the 3 poison snakes inside their hearts, one or the other blocks their way, making things hard to handle. Raise your hands and snap your fingers. Homage to the Buddha. (253) Children, I implore you, get out of the burning house now. 3 carts wait outside to save you from a homeless life. Relax in the village square. Before the sky, everything's empty. No direction is better or worse. East is just as good as west. Those who know the meaning of this are free to go where they want. 254. Sad creatures of a transient existence, life after life without any end, day after day without any rest, year after year growing old, unaware, always working for food and clothes, plaguing their minds with afflictions, going in circles for millions of years, back and forth on the three hateful paths. $265. When hermits hide from society, most retire to the hills, where green vines veil the slopes and jade streams echo, unbroken, where happiness reigns and contentment lasts, where pure white lotus minds aren't stained by the muddy world. Reminds me, I'm actually drinking a cup of Drum Mountain White Cloud tea this evening. Beautiful white tea, grown in the shade of a Buddhist monastery in Fujian province. Drum Mountain White Cloud tea, how appropriate for the poems of Han Shan. 301. Cold mountain is so cold. Ice locks up the rocks, concealing mountain green, revealing winter white. Then the sun shines and ice begins to melt. On this warmth, an old man survives. 302. The mountain I live on, nobody knows. Inside the clouds, it's always deserted. I'll give you that again. It's such a short poem, this little 4-line poem. The mountain I live on, nobody knows. Inside the clouds, it's always deserted. $307. Whoever has Cold Mountains poems is better off than those with sutras. Write them up on your screen and read them from time to time. I think that's really an appropriate poem too. One of the things Han Shan did was he wrote his poems on pieces of bamboo, on pieces of wood, on stone, on the walls of homes of people, and they were collected in this way by others. And so it's really interesting when he says write them up on your screen and read them from time to time. He's also in many ways in this poem empowering the individual to write their own poems and to write their own lives and to merge with the Tao in that way. I'm just going to read a couple spontaneously, see where my eye rests. 262. All the people I see live a while, then die. 16 only yesterday, a strong and passionate youth. Today, he's over 70. His strength and looks long gone, just like a spring day flower, blooming at dawn, gone by dusk. $210. Talking about food won't make you full. Talking about clothes won't keep you warm. Only eating food will make you full. Only wearing clothes will keep you warm. People who don't know how to reason just say a Buddha is hard to find. Look inside your mind. There's the Buddha. Don't look around outside. (185). When will the treadmill of life and death stop? Each rebirth gets more confusing until we discover the jewel of our mind. We're like blind mules following our feet. It's certainly a poem about reincarnation and cleansing one's consciousness so as not to have to come back to the human plane. Let me give you this poem, again in keeping with the teachings of the Buddha. Let me give you this little four-line poem again, 185. When will the treadmill of life and death stop? Each rebirth gets more confusing until we discover the jewel of our mind. We're like blind mules following our feet. And I think I'll close with that poem for you this evening. Again, I read from the Collected Songs of Cold Mountain, which is the revised version of the translations that Red Pine did of Han Shan or Cold Mountain. This is from Copper Canyon Press. I hope you seek his work out. This is a wonderful book to keep around on a coffee table, at your bedside. The poems are short, they're deeply instructive, and I think you could just open to a poem a day and use it as a kind of meditation for the rest of the day, or read a poem before sleep and take that poem into your consciousness as you drift off. Thanks so much for joining Bootsy and me for another episode of A Gray Barn Rising.